Video games have a lot to offer, needless to say. There's platforming, racing, resource management, puzzle solving, but what's always fascinated me the most is, well, boss fights. I mean, they're everywhere. They can be found in pretty much every genre, and it's no surprise. There's nothing quite like pitting your skills against an extraordinary foe, and they're extremely versatile too, from bosses that wow you with incredible spectacle, to fights that are so incredibly creative that you just can't help but be impressed. And what about brutally hard but fair challenges that make you feel like an absolute legend when you finally overcome them? And the real beauty of it is that there really are no bad ideas, besides the obvious, when it comes to making bosses. Don't get me wrong, there are certainly lots of bad bosses out there, but pretty much any idea can work as long as it's executed correctly. In fact, if it weren't for boss fights, I don't think I ever really would have gotten into video games in the first place. There's just something about them that seems to encapsulate everything that I like about video games. Which is all to say that it's not much of a surprise that my Terraria mod Forgotten Evils has a very heavy focus on boss fights, and now that I'm making my own video game, Overcast, surprise surprise, it also has a very heavy focus on bosses. For those who don't know, Overcast is an action platformer game that I'm making with a couple of friends. There will be, as is currently planned, 6 levels and 5 boss fights. I've shown footage of 3 boss fights so far, and I've shown a full video of the first boss. But today, I'd just like to take a more in-depth look at the second boss of the game, the Ice King. Out of the 3 bosses I've made, this one I would say is by far the most impressive. The first boss was very simple by necessity, which is why I didn't bother to commentate on it, but I think there's a fair amount to talk about here in regard to how it was made, and also related to my general design philosophy when it comes to making boss fights. The Ice King, as he is called, has a very similar design philosophy to a lot of my bosses in Forgotten Evils. Being a Overcast boss and not a Terraria boss, needless to say that would change some things, but the formula is the same. It honestly feels kind of weird making this kind of video for Overcast instead of for Forgotten Evils, which has been like my main claim to fame for a long time, but seeing as Overcast is a project that we might actually make some money off of, I'm kind of obligated to make more videos about that and hopefully get more people interested. That being said, before we get the analysis started, if you haven't heard, 100% of my viewers are subscribed, so if you're watching this and you aren't subscribed yet, then you don't exist. So, what do I really mean by formula or design theme? Well, here's what I like to do for my bosses, generally. Give the boss a selection of unique attacks, preferably each one feeling quite distinct and accomplishing something unique so that you have to approach each attack in a slightly different way, and then just have the boss randomly alternate between them. There's no particular attack pattern, and whenever an attack ends, the boss can choose any random attack from its selection. I also often like to add a clause that basically says that the boss can't repeat the same attack twice. A good example of this is the Cursed Mode Queen Slime fight in Forgotten Evils. Some may know that in her first phase she basically just grabs all these different memes and references from other games to perform various attacks, and, at least for me, it would feel pretty annoying and tedious for her to use the nameless deity, drop him, and then just come back with another nameless deity. In fact, the Queen Slime is actually the only boss where she has to go through all of her attacks, though she can do them in random order, before she can repeat any of them, which guarantees that there won't be any sense of repetitiveness to the fight. Her second form, where she gets some proper attacks, does not go that far, but she is not allowed to repeat the same attack more than once without doing another one, because there are definitely some attacks, like her slam attack or her laser attack, that would get really annoying if she could spam them. However, for the case of the Ice King, he is allowed to repeat his attacks, due to them being fairly simple and short, so they won't feel tedious or unfair if he does spam them a little. So, how does he work? Well, he starts out being completely stationary, just sitting on his throne and performing various magic attacks. He doesn't have any melee attacks per se, and he also doesn't deal any contact damage. But it's not a good idea to hang out right next to him because 2 of his attacks do emit projectiles directly from his body, so you'll end up getting shot at point blank if you're not careful. His attacks are fairly simple in execution, as was said earlier, but are fairly unique and fit the thematic. A shower of icicles from the ceiling, a wave of ice that travels across the arena, a trail of snowflakes that follows the player, each one being harmless for a moment before exploding and dealing contact damage, a barrage of icicles that comes out of the boss and fires at you, and 3 waves of projectiles from the boss that requires that you use your invincibility dash. It should be noted that to avoid frustrating situations, the attack where 3 waves of projectiles come out of the boss is well telegraphed with the Ice King slowly lighting up. The icicles that come out of him don't do contact damage until they actually launch at you, and the Ice Spike wave will always spawn on the opposite side of the arena adjacent to the player. This makes it much less likely for the player to get caught completely off guard by an attack, and will hopefully greatly reduce the amount of hits that feel unfair. It may surprise some people to learn that I actually have such considerations when designing bosses, but believe me, if some of my Cursed Mode bosses feel unfair right now, they would be impossible if not for this. But of course, that can't be the entire fight. He has a good selection of attacks, and they do keep you on your toes due to the random nature of the fight, but pretty much every boss needs to escalate in some way. I've tried a lot of different approaches to making bosses evolve in my mod. Now, sometimes I'll opt for something flashy like completely changing the rhythm and tempo of the fight and adding a completely new attack pattern, but often enough, the best approach is to just take what you're currently working with and escalate it to the next logical conclusion. Add some small change that has rippling effects on the gameplay and changes how you have to approach the fight, while raising the stakes and making it feel more climactic. This is by no means an original concept. It has been done many times before in many different games, and it will be done many more times because it's just that good. It's a very reliable method of escalating a boss fight without abandoning the core concepts. As such, once you've dealt enough damage to get the Ice King to about 50% health, he'll teleport off of his throne to the side of the arena. However, the very observant will notice that another Ice King has appeared on the opposite side of the arena. This is a clone. It cannot be killed, and it does not have eyes, so that's how you tell them apart. The Ice King gains no new attacks in this phase, but as you might expect, they will now both be performing attacks. If the attack is the Ice Wave, the Projectile Spread, or the Icicle Barrage, they will both just perform the exact same attack at the same time, but with some minor nerfs to compensate for the fact that there are now 2 of them. For example, the Ice Wave isn't nearly as wide, and the Icicle Barrage does not contain as many icicles. However, if the Ice King chooses to do the Icicle Rain or the Snowflake Trail, the clone will choose to do one of 3 things after a short delay. Either shoot out a single wave of projectiles, shoot out a small barrage of icicles, or shoot a wave across the floor. Needless to say, the second part of the fight is quite a bit more challenging due to having to keep track of 2 threats and avoid projectiles coming at you from both sides. However, thanks to the nerfs and the way the attacks are synced up, it feels deliberate and not like I just copy-pasted the boss. Again, it's a very simple change that makes the fight a lot more interesting without even adding a single new attack. And you know, it's funny to think about, double bosses have definitely been a thing for a long time, but has one ever been handled quite like this? If so, then feel free to let me know in the comments, but I digress. Once you've mastered this second phase, you've pretty much won because that's the whole fight. It's nothing groundbreaking, I'd say, just simple yet charming, which is the way I like to approach boss design. This boss, and this game, of course, are being made in Game Maker. I'd show you the code, but it's just a bunch of HTML visual blocks, I think, so it's not much to look at. Anyway, I think that's it for this video, so feel free to let me know what you think about this boss, any ideas and thoughts you might have about the game in general in the comments below. I'd like this game to be a fairly big success, of course. I mean, as always, I try to keep my expectations realistic, but all support is appreciated nonetheless. And if you like this sort of content and would like to support the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button and ringing the bell. Thank you, goodbye.